Is it time to ban social media for under 16s? Who's going to win the Gorton and Denton by-election? And is net zero possible or even worth it? Well, let's talk about it and let's get political. And welcome to Let's Get Political on Quays TV, a student political show where we discuss the big things happening in British politics. I'd like to welcome two new guests. We have Roman Kareev and Ben Fidimore, and our returning guest, a bit of a veteran now, aren't you, Logan Singleton, and I'm your host, Matthew Hargreaves. Okay, so we have three topics, and we will start with social media. So the government has launched a consultation on banning social media for under 16s in the UK as a part of a series of measures which it says are intended to protect young people's well-being. The package will also see Ofsted given the power to check policies on phone use, with ministers saying they expect schools to be phone-free by default as a result. The world's first social media ban for young people obviously took effect in Australia back in December, prompting other countries, including the UK, to consider following. So let's start with a yes or no from everyone, just to get you all in the ready. Ben, yes or no, do you think social media should be banned for under 16s?
No.
Okay.
No.
I do.
Okay, well, normally everyone agrees, which is a bit boring, so now we've got... Ben, why do you not want it to be banned?
Well, I do want it to be banned, but I don't think we should ban it, because I believe that if we did ban it, they'd get in there somehow anyway, using VPNs, dark web. And I think at least that if we haven't banned social media and we increase regulation on it as opposed to banning it, then it's more protection for under 16s. I don't think they should be using it at all, but I know, as we've already seen with like the porn ban for under 18s last year, people can get into these things anyway, whereas if we have, it's like the argument of legalising cannabis. If you legalise it, then it might well be more regulated, but at the moment people get it illegally and it could be more dangerous, and I think that would be the same with social media. I think it'll just become more dangerous if we ban it.
You also agree, Roman?
Well, I think that obviously it's undeniable that the amount of insanity you see on social media and the way it can radicalize people, and you know, this stuff is obviously not suitable for children. So I fully understand the sort of why people want to see it happen. I just think that if it was actually banned for under 16-year-olds, that would imply that in order to use Instagram or whatever, you would need to somehow, you know, verify your identity and do age verification, all of that. And I just think that if we value freedom of information, we should be kind of, you know, suspicious slightly of any attempt to kind of make it harder, even with a noble cause in mind, but still to access content on the internet. So
yeah. Well, Logan, you think it should be banned?
I think it's sort of like I think it's a good idea, but I imagine it will be poorly executed in the same sense that the Online Safety Act has been. It's a good idea in a premise, it's just been poorly executed. Like, I mean, for me personally, I never had social media until I was 16. Not because my parents banned it or anything like that, I just never saw the point of it. I had my Xbox and I played on my Xbox, and if my friend wanted to get in contact with me, it was either my phone number or my game tag. that was about it. And the amount of stuff that we see now on social media and how desensitized everyone gets to it. I mean, take Jeffrey Epstein, for example. Everyone like sort of knows he was this massive paedophile and sex offender, and everyone's just joking about it. And I'm sort of like scratching my head like, should we be joking about it? We've got 15, 16-year-olds, you know, young teenagers who are like making jokes of it. And it's very serious stuff. And I think there is a factor where obviously, you know, would we have to bring in some form of identification to make sure that the person's 16 maybe, but also at the same time, I imagine most under 16s are being provided with their phone by their parents. It's very simple for the parents to just with the phone company to say, yes, this child is still in high school. You don't have to even say under 16, you just say still in high school. And I imagine you can do some technological, you know, wizardry to make sure that things like the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store and stuff like that just don't provide those services. Sure, you could get a VPN, but you can also just ban that through it. You can just block it. And I think we'll see what the legislation says. It's a good idea, but I imagine it'll be poorly executed.
Yeah, because it also states that phones in schools are going to be banned. Do you agree with that, Ben?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because I think young people spend far too much time on their phones now, and that's probably because of social media, and I think social media is a massive problem. I think it's rotting the brains of young people. Attention spans are shorter than they ever have been. So to have those hours in the day where you're not on the phone is a great idea. And I think it'd be great if young people didn't use social media at all, but I think you say it'd be poorly executed, a ban. I think that's the problem, and I just think it could make the situation worse. Because young people like to do things that are rebellious, right? They like to rebel in front of their parents and stuff like that. Aren't they just going to be even worse if we ban it? They'll find a way. They're clever. They're cleverer than a lot of people think when it comes to tech, particularly. So, yeah.
Because you've got, I mean, for me, the biggest example is the Charlie Kirk assassination. That was shown on social media and you saw it all. And children, no one should obviously be seeing that, especially children. So that is very interesting to see what happens with that. The Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has already said a party would introduce the ban if they were in power. What do you think about that, Roman?
Well, I watched an interview of Badenoch on trigonometry, and she mentioned, when she was asked about what's the one thing we're not talking about that we should be, she said the damage that social media or the internet, something like that, has on children. And she referenced specifically Jonathan Haidt, who is a psychologist and an author who wrote about this topic extensively and kind of documented all the things you talked about. And I mean, everyone in the room can attest to the fact that social media is probably not the best thing, happening to us right now. So I definitely understand her kind of position on this. I just, as I said, with the age verification thing, I just think that, and also I agree with what you said, that kind of bypassing that is also an option that, we can't pretend that's not going to happen. So I respect her position on this, but I don't think I would, if I was to vote on this one issue tomorrow, I wouldn't support a ban on it. No.
So Logan, do you think that it wouldn't work even if they did want to ban it? Do you think kids would find a way?
I think it's sort of a 50-50. A lot of schools in the UK independently have already started banning phones. And they have received such positive feedback from the students themselves, and this isn't just, let's get all our nice students out to look smart for the cameras. These are just students who are going, you know what, it's really helped my mental health. We know the effects that it has on mental health now. We know that being on our phones all day, every day is not healthy for us. And kids now, like in our generation and the generation that came after us, we are aware of what is healthy for us. It's not like, people don't really smoke anymore, people don't really drink anymore, and now people are wising up to social media. We're not using it as much, or we are aware of the fact that it can be unhealthy. And especially in schools, I mean, social media in that school environment is not a place where anyone wants to be.
Would you say, though, that some argue that vulnerable children need social media to connect with communities which they may not be able to locally?
I disagree with that, because the vulnerable children are the ones who are most likely to be exploited through social media. I've worked with kids who are SEND, so special educational needs and difficulties, who have been horrifically bullied through social media, just through social media. They're able to socialise. You can socialise in different ways. Yes, social media does help that aspect, of course it does. But just because you are able to talk to someone with their phone across like the town, I guess, does not mean that, for every one good person there's 10 malicious people, and it's all online. They don't understand that that has real world implications.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on to our next topic, guys. So, people living in the Greater Manchester constituency of Gorton and Denton will soon head to the polls to elect their new MP. This by-election was triggered by former Labour Andrew Gwynn, who stood down on medical grounds. The election will be held on Thursday, the 26th of February. Labour won with 13,000 votes, suspended for sending offensive messages, though. So let's, again, I love a one-word answer because politicians never give it. Who do you think is going to win? Let's start with that.
What a question.
What a question.
Green or Reform?
Okay.
Reform.
I think Green or Reform.
Okay. Ben, who do you want to win?
I don't know who I want to win because I think it's very hard to pick a party that actually represents people these days. I think everything is so. I think we're in a very unique political landscape at the moment. The Conservatives don't seem to stand for anything really. Labour are the same as them. They're both two very plastic parties who you can't really get anything out of. And then you've got two extremes. You've got Greens on the left with Zach Polanski, and their popularity has surged since he became leader in September. There are some questionable things that they want to do which I think are quite far to the left of the spectrum, and then Reform, that's quite far to the right. I think it's either going to be one of those two parties, because I think the people of Gorton and Denton are frustrated that things have just been so bad recently with the economy, and so they are going to go to one of the extremes. I don't know if they're going to go to the left or the right. I genuinely...
You don't think Labour have got a... Because
I don't think Labour have a chance.
Seat.
No, I don't think Labour have a chance because I was in Gorton last week. I was at the Green Party conference, so there was a lot of appetite for the Green Party there. However, people just feel... These are lots of people who were there, are former Labour voters who have switched to the Greens because they do not feel like they're represented by Starmer anymore. And I think a lot of people were very upset that Andy Burnham was blocked as well, considering he has been a true local kind of patriot for Manchester in recent years.
Yeah. Roman, as you're obviously from the Young Conservatives, do you think the Conservatives have a chance in this by-election?
Well, I mean, it's important not to engage in wishful thinking and look at the data. So, based on the polls that I have seen, obviously there's still a month left, so things could change. And I want to point out about, because my people might not know about this, that the Greens recently posted a graph showing supposedly that they are in second place at the moment. But there is an article on Full Fact kind of debunking that and showing that the graph they showed does not actually represent the way that the votes would be kind of distributed, or the way that they're predicted to be right now. So essentially they showed Labour as losing votes compared to the previous election, which obviously is going to happen. I agree with you what you said about Burnham. Like, it's evident that if he, I think no one would disagree that if they did let him run, they would have a much higher chance that they now have with, I forgot the lady's name, but the candidate they now have. So, with that, if that is kind of news of that spread as much as I think they should be, because, just maybe shouldn't be posting fake news on the internet. I think that that is a massive argument in favour of Reform.
Do you think Reform are going to win?
Oh yeah. I'm not happy about it. I'm not a Reform supporter, and I think that the fact that they're so popular shows that kind of lack of ideological cohesion. What you said about the Conservatives, that that people think they are so much like Labour in the sense that they don't really stand for anything, and I think that you do need a very clear kind of ideological vision, and Reform does provide that. So there's so many Conservatives, both members higher figures like Jenrick and Braverman, but also supporters now voting or supporting Reform for this reason.
Logan, who did you say again that you think?
I think it's a toss-up between the Greens and Reform.
Yeah.
On the one side, the polls are in Reform's favour. On the other side, we're hearing things like the bookies being on the Green side. I think it will literally come down to voter turnout. Gorton and Denton, I was looking at the statistics for this, have a 46% of voter turnout of their population. But this has always been the issue in British politics. All of our referendums, and I mean, I think the worst voter turnout was Tony Blair's second election, just because people are just like, yeah, he's going to win anyway, and just didn't bother to vote.
The one in 2024 was very low as well, wasn't it? It was,
so I think we have now learned, I should say, through, I guess, like America, the importance of voting. Whether you think your party's going to win or not, vote. Vote for whoever you want, because I don't think, It could be Reform, could be Green. I think it's literally going to be down to who turns out to vote.
Do you think, because obviously young people do not vote a lot and they are most popular with the Greens, do you think youth turnout could result in Greens winning or losing then, maybe?
I think the issue is, like a lot of youths say that they're going to do something and then don't do it. Like I would love to, vote, but the Speaker is my MP, so I don't get that choice. And I envy every 18-year-old who is able to vote, because you are now able to do it, have your voice heard. And people are always like, oh yeah, but it won't matter. It doesn't matter who I vote for. They're all the same. Yeah, but there's a difference between having what's going on in America and then having stability. Which one do you want to choose? And that's why it matters.
Well, let's speak about Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham, since some people did touch upon it. So Keir Starmer has defended the decision to block Andy Burnham from standing. He's widely seen as a potential leadership challenge to Sir Keir Starmer should he return to Westminster. This decision was the making body of the National Executive Committee, and he said he's blocking him to avoid an unnecessary mayoral election. Do you think, Ben, that's right, or do you think he's just scared of him?
I think he's scared of him. I think at the end of the day that is the case. I think he's lost Gorton now. I think he kind of was willing to sacrifice this seat to save himself, and I think he's come out looking really, really weak here, because at the end of the day Labour are going to really struggle now. When I was at this Green Party conference last week, they didn't reference Labour for about half an hour into any of the talking. It was all very pro-immigration, that sort of thing, because they were trying to directly go against what Reform is saying. They think that their only competition is Reform, and it's very much the same with Reform and the videos that they've been posting online. Keir Starmer hasn't been to Gorton either, whereas Nigel Farage and Zach Polanski have, and I think Keir Starmer doesn't care. I almost think the reason he hasn't been up here is because he doesn't want to face the Labour membership of this area and be grilled about it. So I think it shows he's weak, and I don't think it's going to pay off in the long run. If it is true what he's saying, that it's because of an expensive mayoral election, then he could have always just said, put the deputy mayor in, and we'll just have to do it, because it's a case of, is money more important than political stability? And I think having Andy Burnham in may have helped Labour in the long run. So I think the Labour backbenchers are going to be really annoyed about this.
I think, to add to your point as well, I don't think it's just necessarily about money. I think it's also political as well. Because I was also reading up on this as well about why, because it just sounds a little bit silly. And they're sort of saying that they're a bit afraid if Reform is going to win the mayoral race, the possibility of that happening. Now, obviously, whether or not a Reform mayor would be good for the city is up for people's subjective opinions and stuff like that.
A lot of people are happy with Andy Burnham as mayor, aren't they?
And that's the thing, Andy Burnham's done such a great job for everyone, making everything a little bit cheaper, trying to sort of loosen social restrictions and boundaries, between, classes and ideologies and stuff like that. And I think sort of shaking it up with Reform whilst Manchester is doing so well economically as well is sort of one of those things where it's like, do you want to run that risk of stability or just keep it? And I think Keir Starmer knows that he's damaged the Labour reputation. I think in doing that, but at the moment he is safe. He is still in government and he is still Prime Minister. So I think he doesn't mind rocking that little bit of a boat until the next election, and then he can just sort of wash his hands of it.
Roman, do you think that if Andy Burnham was running, this would be a very different conversation?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, Burnham was it the most popular Labour politician or one? Yeah, I saw a graph on the most, kind of the best source for that, TLDR News, showing that he was the top Labour politician in terms of support. So I think that, maybe it would be a stretch to say, oh yes, he would have definitely won the by-election, but he definitely would have had a greater chance of winning it. But also what you said about a Reform mayor, it feels like, it's easy to kind of accuse the National Executive Committee of, favoritism. But to be fair, in either of the two choices or the options that they have, they are risking something very big. Like if they did let him be the candidate and they did get a reform mayor, what would be better? Having Burnham, who is very popular with Labour supporters, in Westminster, and that way kind of improving the reputation of the party, maybe, so that people who do like Burnham don't defect to the Greens, and they still kind of they still support the party because they go, well, at least they let Burnham into the into Westminster. So that's one option. But the other one, which is what they did, is at the very least they secure the mayoralty of someone who's very popular with the Labour voters, at the price of potentially losing Gorton, Denton to reform. So it's like in both cases they are risking something very important, essentially. So it's a very hard choice to make.
Okay. Well, we'll move into our last topic of the show. So Kemi Badenoch said last year that it is impossible for the UK to meet its net zero target by 2050, which was a goal set by previous Conservative government Theresa May back in 2019. So this means the UK must cut carbon emissions until it removes as much as it produces, in line with the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Reform UK also want to scrap UK's net zero target, while the Conservatives say they're going to look at a different target date. She consider doing, if a party found a better way, delivering net zero. Now, she did say this last year, but I still think it's very, very relevant. So, is it impossible to reach this goal?
I think it's entirely possible. I think we're really close to doing it anyway. London has, for the consecutive year again, has been named the greenest city in Europe and the cleanest air in Europe. And it's getting all of this investments back in. This excuse of going green makes you go broke. I mean, it hasn't. London's just had a mini boom again. For the, how many times has it happened? How many years has it been going on for? Manchester's doing the same thing. We're going, a little bit greener. The public transport going into cleaner energy.
You don't think it's too expensive?
No, I think it's cheaper, if anything, in the long run. There's now been research done that when people are like, solar energy, in 10 or 20 years, you'll have to replace the whole thing, when the actual science behind it now is actually saying that it only loses 20% of its original function of output, its production capacity, after 30 years. Only 20%. And the amount of land and natural space that we need to produce cleaner and greener energy is not that much. And the sooner we sooner we move away from oil and into energy, we'll be the next Saudi Arabia. As soon as we're able to maximise production of green energy and sell it, or make our own green cars and stuff like that and sell green products, it will be like we have our own oil fields. They're just wind farms instead. And the benefit of green energy is that you can't hoard it. You can't make it any more expensive just because, the wind just wins. You can't hoard the wind where you can hoard, obviously, oil and stuff.
Roman, do you agree? Do you think it's doable? Too expensive?
Well, I think that it's important to, when we're talking about what is possible or achievable, it's also important to look at kind of the electoral support for such policies. And I think that based on the polls I have seen, the public generally do support environmental causes, for lack of a better word. But I just think that net zero, whether it is desirable or not, let's forget for a second whether it's achievable or not, but even whether it's desirable or not is not as well, it's not the priority issue for people, I think. And I think it's very damaging what happened to the kind of ideological changes in the Green Party. And I could talk about the ideology of the Green Party and the issues I see with it all day. But basically, by moving away from specifically the focus on the environment to this kind of catch-all, progressivism without any ideology or direction, and just kind of very empty slogans of hope and kindness, good luck winning, say, Matthew Goodwin, who is an experienced debater and everything, and you might say that his positions are wrong on the nation and immigration or any of that, but he presents it in a kind of very direct, clear way.
Because they want to scrap it, and the Conservatives want to scrap it as well.
Oh no, I wasn't referring to net zero. I meant like other issues that he has an opinion. So what I'm saying, the reason why this is important, I think, is if you have the party which has green in its name, not really focusing. Like, when was the last time you heard of like a senior green politician say anything about the environment? Anything I see by them is, about Palestine, immigration, transgenders. I'm not saying like they have no right to say anything on these topics. I'm saying that as the Green Party, you would probably expect more of a focus on this. And so I think that, is it doable in terms of like, the state capacity or resources mobilization for this goal? Maybe. I'm not an expert on energy matters, but I think that in terms of electoral support, this is not what the people are primarily concerned about. And if you have a party whose primary goal, you would assume, would be to kind of mobilize this support and to, I don't want to say educate maybe, but like, raise awareness about environmental issues, doing anything but that, I think that is damaging the environmentalist cause, broadly speaking.
Then what do you think?
It's an interesting one. If it happens, it happens. If we can do it, it's great, because we are getting hotter and hotter each year. The weather is becoming more and more extreme. You can see that climate change is happening. I think it's an interesting target as such to put like an exact statistic on it. I think as long as we don't end up making working people pay loads of money whilst the rich can get away with paying nothing towards changing things, then it's a good idea. I think we should just try and keep on developing our green energy year in, year out, and cutting down fossil fuels, as opposed to making it an exact target for net zero as such. But I think if we manage to do it, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, Logan, 1% the UK contributes to, although historically we're responsible for nearly 5% since the Industrial Revolution. So Labour promised to ban petrol and diesel sales from 2030, an extra 6.6 billion to upgrade 5 million homes, an extra 27.8 billion for the National Wealth Fund has been launched. That sounds like a lot of money to me, but we only contribute 1%, so why all the bother?
I mean, I guess it does sound like a lot of money, of course, and stuff like that, and of course it is, but at the same time, it's money that needs to be spent. I think the closer we get from removing ourselves to a finite resource such as oil, the better the long term is going to be for us. Look at how Cuba is doing at the moment. They have 12 to 15 days of oil left because they've been cut off from the US, and there's an embargo, and they're not getting any of their Venezuelan oil anymore because Maduro's been arrested. 12 to 15 days. Imagine if we got cut off from oil for whatever reason. Maybe we're in a war, maybe we're in a trade war, anything like that. How much oil do we possibly have? Where if we have like hybrid cars, electric cars, if we're on, that capacity of having electricity and just being able to live our normal lives, it's alright then, isn't it? We might need oil for a tank or something, but, the closer we remove ourselves from a finite resource that can be controlled by superpowers, the better it will be for us as a nation in the long term. And obviously, improving infrastructure such as housing and stuff like that, we know that needs to happen. The population continues to grow, though I do think that they need to sort of have a question of, obviously, rent at some point needs to be frozen. There needs to be another price cap on renting, or how many houses a landlord could possibly own, because no one can afford to live anywhere.
Yeah. Well, final question before we all finish, guys. Do you trust, start with you, Ben, do you trust Labour that they can deliver this in their parliament, or do you think the only way is the Green Party?
I don't think you can trust anybody, to be quite honest. I think the idea of banning diesel and petrol cars by 2030, Labour have chucked that out there. Where is the plan? Because at the moment, electric cars are expensive. They're made from lithium batteries, which are just as bad because they originate from oil. So what is their plan to get us into a position where we can logically ban diesel and petrol sales in 2030? I haven't seen anything like that. They've even made it more expensive to drive the electric cars in their current form as well, with the 3p per mile road tax. So I don't think I just don't see how this is going to be possible. This is 4 years away, and we are nowhere near in a position where we can go electric on the road. So I don't trust them at all.
Okay. Roman, do you think the Greens is the only way to get this target?
What, net zero?
Yeah.
I mean, considering the record they have, was it Brighton, where they controlled the council and it didn't end well from what I heard. I wouldn't say I would trust the Green Party on net zero, because I feel like with net zero, or with any like environmental issue, the primary kind of opinion, or like the opinion we value the most should come from the experts and the scientists, and how educated the public is. Thank you for saying the thing about lithium batteries, because I was about to say something like that about the electric cars. Everyone knows, we read it in, GCSE biology textbook about how carbon emissions work and the greenhouse gases and why all of that is bad. But how educated is an average Brit about the actual benefits or drawbacks and the kind of potential consequences of switching to let's say hybrid cars? Or even with things like paper and plastic, like it is a truth universally acknowledged that paper is better than plastic, but does anyone here know of any research on this? Because personally I don't, on is paper actually better than plastic? How well is the plastic actually recycled here, etc. So there's so many issues on which the average voter doesn't, I think, judging by my own ignorance on this, the average voter doesn't have that much information on, that to expect like massive electoral support for a party pursuing a certain policy is, until the electorate is educated on this, I think is unlikely.
Logan, do you think Greens are the best option out of the...
I think there's too many sorts of variables, and as much as I like, going towards a greener prospect, of course we have to do that steadily. We can't just rush something like that. Okay.
Well, that is it. I'd like to say a massive thank you to our guests. Thank you very much for appearing, guys, and thank you for watching. We'll be back in a fortnight, but for now, goodbye.